Hello fellow HMA students, my name is Matthew Marshall. Today I want to talk about the evolution of the genre of horror. The first horror films were silent. The Manor of the Devil is widely considered the first horror movie. It used imagery like skeletons, bats, and the devil that are widely considered as staple images of fear and death. This movie came out in 1896. Frankenstein was a huge staple as well, coming out in 1910. Frankenstein was, in my opinion, the first monster movie. He was not a reanimated corpse, though, which means he is not a zombie, contrary to what I used to think. German Expressionism came next, around the years 1910 to 1930. The first films used painted scenery that was non-realistic and used paintings to represent lights and shadows to help them save money on tight budgets due to World War I. The films dealt with negative ideas from war like anger, going crazy, backstabbing, and other harsh imagery. The biggest film that came from this and widely considered one of the best horror films is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is a film about a hypnotist making someone kill people for him. Eventually came a time in the 1920s to the 1950s when movies decided to make a lot of gothic monster movies. During this period, sound was implemented into films. This was considered the universal gothic horror cycle. Movies like Frankenstein, Dracula, The Mummy, Werewolf of London, and The Invisible Man came out during this period. These movies had spin-offs, and the monster-themed movies stayed and played a significant role in horror. In the 1950s, the movie studio switched it up and did a lot of science fiction movies like The Thing from Another World, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, and The Day the Earth Stood Still. These movies used monsters from space and the ocean. Come the 1960s, though, horror was creating both psychological movies and also monster movie spin-offs. A very prominent director was Roger Corman. He was known for being able to produce movies quick and make movies that made good profit. Him and Richard Matheson made horror films like The Pit and the Pendulum, The Raven, and House of Usher. These were a part of the Edgar Allan Poe movies. Come the late 1960s and early 70s, occult horror began to flourish with movies like Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist. These movies were about satanic things or the supernatural, but even the B-list movies could still see success. Jaws spawned a whole genre called shark horror. The 70s into the 80s had horror branching all over the place. Carrie, teen horror, Alien, space horror, poltergeist, ghost horror, and The Shining, psychological horror. Teen horror became very popular in the 80s. Films like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street were released and saw huge success. The films were cheap to make and made lots of money. But we can definitely give credit to the Saw series, which is considered torture porn, and the Blair Witch Project, which started the found footage genre, which is my favorite genre. Movies like Cloverfield and Paranormal Activity are a part of this. Where will we go next with the horror subgenres and the evolution of horror? I think CGI will play a much bigger role in upcoming horror films than ever before, because it can open up a world of opportunity for blood effects, architecture, explosions, character modeling, and so much more. Thanks for listening.